Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I don't know if you can see me. Oh yeah, I have my computer set up, so I'm awkwardly standing right here. How are you guys?
Very good. And we're honored to be part of your program and your class.
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you.
as you probably have explained to your class, we're retired. We're not
Yep.
retarded. We are retired. We're 83 years old. We've had our chance to take care of this world. Probably haven't done the best job, but it's a privilege to work with young women and young men as you have and pass the torch on to the next generation. So
Aw.
with that, we'll answer anything that we can.
All right. So I kind of explained this to you guys too the other day, but what we're studying right now is basically obviously different generations, and so we're trying to find people from different generations. So it was really awesome that you guys volunteered to help us out with this. And they're kind of prepped with some questions to ask you about things that have impacted you throughout your lives in terms of things that have happened in the world, in the United States, and general kind of events, but also specifically some things that have happened in your life that might have changed your view of the world. Just from being born up to now, how you've experienced different changes in your life. But then also the part of that is how does this impact your view of the world, and how does this impact your political stances and how you think politics and government and stuff work and function. So
We think we've got a few years of experience.
that's
We've
true.
been through 15 presidents.
Yeah. Okay. I never put it into that perspective, but yeah, that's true. All right.
It started with FDR.
FDR was president when you were okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. I don't think of that as I think of it too because I teach history, so I don't necessarily think of that as a starting point for when you guys were born. But yeah, so FDR was president when you guys were born. That makes sense. You guys want to start firing away some other questions, to get to know them a little bit? Maria. So this is Maria. You guys can introduce yourselves. Say your name. And you're going to ask them questions too. I'll move out of the way too.
Hi, my name's Maria.
Make sure you're nice and loud.
And I had a.
Can you hear them?
No.
Why don't you, as you ask questions, why don't you come up a little bit? Just, I don't know how good the microphone or the computer is. You can sit there or, yeah.
Hi, my name's Maria, and I had a quick question on how your military background impacted the way you see politics or make political decisions.
Thank you, Maria. Maria, that's an excellent question. I believe you asked how military experience influenced my attitude on the government. I joined the Army through the military, through the ROTC program at college. It was a time when students my age were susceptible to a draft call, and if you wanted to continue college, you could agree to join the ROTC and commit at least 2 years of military service once you completed the college. If you didn't choose to do that, you could be drafted and not be able to finish college. I joined active duty November 24th, 1963. Now, I don't know if you folks can do the math, but November 26th or 22nd, I believe, somewhere in that frame, one of the most influential events in Linda and my lives occurred. That was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. What happened was I was fairly newly married, had one child, and was to report to active duty the Saturday after the Thursday that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. At the time, the country was in turmoil, as you can well imagine. I reported for active duty down in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. The following week of my first time on military duty was spent in mourning. There was nothing going on as far as any of the military training. It was all devoted to honoring and taking care of the funeral of John F. Kennedy. Throughout my military service, I was in the service at the time after Kennedy was assassinated. President Johnson took over, and at that point in time, the Vietnam crisis was developing. By the time I had my 2 years of service, there was a freeze on the military, and I and my family had to stay in the military for another year and a half. During that last year and a half, every morning that I reported for duty, I would check the list to see if my name was on the list to head over to Vietnam. Fortunately, it was not. But that particular incident in our country's history, the Vietnam crisis, was something that played an important role in my career. And I can say that my military service is probably one of the most honorable times of my life. I actually tear up a little bit when I think about it. But I hope that answered your question, Maria.
Maria.
Thank you. I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I was just saying my dad was born in June of '63, so I didn't know that you had to report he was only like 6 months old. Well, that's another question. Go ahead, Sarah. You can come up here so they can hear you better too.
Hi, my name is Sarah. So for both of you, how did Vietnam shape basically how you view the government, if there was any fear with the draft or any confusion about the war at all? How did that really affect your political views?
Sarah, could you repeat that just a little slower?
Yeah, sorry. How did the Vietnam War and maybe any fear with the draft affect both of your political views when it comes to government?
Good question. At the time the Vietnam crisis progressed, there was a lot of unrest in the country. I and my family were on an assignment in the States. We were at White Sands Missile Range. I was, you could have called me a rocket scientist. We shot off missiles. How it influenced me, my personal family, I was very much concerned that I would be called to duty. And that would be a difficult assignment. I was a young family at the time. I had
Political views. How did they affect your political views?
at the time, Johnson was highly criticized. I was more involved in my family, hoping that I would not have to go overseas. So the Vietnam crisis was a very difficult time for me and my family, and my political views, I didn't quite understand the reason behind the Vietnam situation, the cause. Again, I was more duty bound. Whatever my country wanted of me, I was willing to take care of, dispose of, but I was very fearful. And I think my political viewpoint was I was not supporting the anti-war sentiment that was prevailing at the time at the country, because I was part of the defense going on. I was subject to being called in, and I accepted that, and I was happy to be discharged and happy that the Vietnam crisis finally ended.
What about you, Nana, from your perspective, like somebody who you were like I think you had kids at that point too, right?
Let's see. No, not yet. No, I was
Not yet. Okay.
I was
So
still,
you were
I was involved actually in the beginning of the computer era, UNIVAC 2, which
yeah.
was the computer. So I was involved in that respect. And I was a computer programmer before they ever had any compilation. We programmed an assembly language, and that was always fun. And then we eventually got to UNIVAC to compiling programs. And in 1965, I guess BASIC came in, which was one of the first programming languages. And that really, so I was involved in business. So with that, at that time, typically business people were Republican people, but we lived in Massachusetts. So Massachusetts was a Democratic state. So as far as politics, people that I worked with oftentimes were Republican, but my family we were growing up, we were always Democrats.
Yeah. And you correct me if I'm wrong. I know Wellesley. Did you go to Wellesley College or you lived in Wellesley or both?
I went to
You lived in Wellesley. Okay.
In Maine. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, go ahead. We have one right over here coming.
My name's Maddie, and earlier you said the assassination of JFK was a major part in your life. Do you think that has changed your political opinions at all?
I'm sorry, Maddie, what was the question again?
You said JFK's assassination was a major part in your life. Do you think that's changed your political beliefs at all?
I was born in Gardner, Mass, which is mid-state of Massachusetts, a blue-collar community. Where Linda was in Wellesley, a Republican community, I was in a Democratic community. And my political views were formed early on. My mom and dad were the Democrats. My dad worked at the polls. We were founded in democratic principles. The assassination of President Kennedy only cemented my viewpoints on politics of the Democratic Party. I am a registered independent, but I do favor a democratic policy and principles. The assassination only did more to reaffirm my support of the democratic principles. Linda? Oh.
Ditto.
So can I ask a follow-up on that question too? So you guys live in Florida now though, right? Which has been much more conservative lately, like with a conservative governor, obviously. How do you think that's, I don't know if your community is maybe different, like you guys, where you live, in the part of the state that you live, if that is different, but like, what do you think about, I guess the difference between like a Democrat running the country versus a Republican running a state? Do you think there's any kind of like differences or anything like that have like shifted, like in terms of responses to community or healthcare or any kind of like natural disaster crisis or something like that?
That's an excellent question, Sam. We are in a heavily Republican community, our community and our state. And it's interesting. I've been involved in local politics here since we moved to Florida. I've campaigned for mayors. We're a nonpartisan, supposedly election, but the partisan parties, the job of the city council pays $10,000 a year for salaries. Campaigning, a candidate would need nearly $25,000 to $40,000 of campaign funds to successfully run, and those funds are coming from political activist committees. we really don't know who they are, but they are Republican based. And the Republican community, based on my opinion anyways, is quite a different atmosphere than Massachusetts. Massachusetts is, as you well know, is a firm Democrat state. Florida is highly Republican. The governor has taken some drastic measures down here. You probably have read about them on education. We have a college, a very, very prestigious college in Sarasota, which is right next to us. Very high-ranking academics. New college, and just most recently, he's changed the staff and the quality and the emphasis of academics over other endeavors such as sports has been reversed, and it's very unfortunate. And Linda might have more of a perspective on some of the detrimental aspects of the governor's actions.
Well, I just think he wants to do without any kind of education committee. All of the prestigious colleges in Florida, he's trying to turn into highlight sports, and education is secondary. And it's very concerning for people of our age, whether they're Republican or Democrat, to see this shift, because we know how important our education was to us throughout our lives. And sports is fun, but people don't understand democracy. The children are not being brought up with even beginning to understand politics and the Constitution. And so that gets thrown around a lot, but the actual understanding of the Constitution is not high on their list for education.
Emergency relief is another issue. We just survived a double whammy hurricane issue. And as far as the state aid or the federal aid, we really haven't seen any of that come through. But we have a local community, and the local community has really kicked in. We're helping each other, and it's the local community that really has bonded together and helped one another. We have a food bank. We have hot meals every day, free. I run up at noontime and 5 o'clock, and I get our meals. So that's
FEMA.
That's our local society, our local food bank that's taking care of that.
You guys have Maria?
You mentioned the importance of education. How do you think your education as like a kid, or like when you went to college, if you went to college, impacted your political views?
Well, I was in political science. I was actually majored in teaching for political science. So there you go. Although I ended up going into software because of a variety of reasons. I think education, I don't know, it's hard to say. You know, the Republicans at our age had different focus, different standards than they apparently do today. So as you've probably heard, the Republicans are, you know, a mix of some MAGA and some traditional Republicans. So education is always good because we had to learn, again, the Constitution. We had to learn what democracy was. Our background was such that we were able to learn so that we could make our own decisions based on the knowledge that we learned in school.
I think from my own personal experience, my education, it would more. There was more emphasis on government and more information on how important it was to participate, and I don't see that as active in your generation. I went to school in Worcester, Mass, and graduate study in Boston. And the education that I got from Massachusetts, I think was a strong education. And as Linda said, down here in Florida, the emphasis is not so much on academics as it is on misguided um, other areas.
So you mentioned something too that I think like, so this is an AP government class, so they're actually studying government and the Constitution. Like they're obviously really interested in this stuff too. But you mentioned that the shift in like Republican ideals and stuff too. Like obviously one of the biggest, most notorious Republican presidents is Reagan, right? And throughout the 80s, Reagan and Reaganomics and the economy and stuff like that. So how do you think, like, you're at a different stage in your life during that period too? What do you think that, I guess how do you think like it's shifted? So you said like more traditional conservatives versus like conservative Republicans today. How have you seen like that change happen? And has that kind of like changed how you view parties and the political system and stuff like that?
Before we get into the answer, Sam, what does AP stand for in your?
Sorry, it's advanced placement. I was like, what is AP? Advanced placement. So that means that they take a test. They're like they're good, very good students. They're high achieving students, and they take a test, like a national certified test at the end of the school year, and they can get college credits for it.
Congratulations to each and every one of you. And again, it's an honor for us to be able to speak with you and encourage you and thank you for stepping forward and becoming an active generation. Like I said earlier, we didn't do too well with our job of taking care of the planet, but we're encouraged to see interest as you have. As far as Reagan economics, Linda and I at that point in time, in the 70s and the 80s, we were pretty much dedicated to raising families. Linda and I, it's our second marriage, but we've known each other since college. So as far as the being involved in politics and the party system, I can't say that I really became involved and could make any comparison between the Democratic principles, the Republican principles, other than what Linda has pointed out, is that the Republican Party that we see today is not anywhere near what Linda and I knew as we were growing up. And it's just become it's created its own life. And I was busy raising a family in the 70s and 80s, and once the family grew up and the empty nest syndrome set up, then I become a little more interested in politics in the 90s and in the 2000s.
Can I follow up with that? Because, oh, Nan, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, I didn't say this to them, so they wouldn't know to ask this follow-up question, but Uncle Pat was deployed, right, in the early 90s during Gulf Storm. Did that kind of shift? Because, like, you had your military service, but then seeing your son go into military service and, like, in active duty in, like, a war zone, has that shifted, or did that have, like, what kind of impact did that have, too?
That's an excellent question. We're blessed. As far as a military service, it's a little bit unusual to say. I had my military sign. My son Patrick was actually in a war zone. He served in Korea as a well. He initially went to Korea, and then that was a hardship duty, and then it was in Bosnia during military conflict. And now he has two sons. Both of them are in the Air Force, and one is teaching in Presidio in California, and the other were anxiously awaiting his return from Kuwait, where he's been on a 6-month assignment. Again, serving in the military is an honor, and it's, as I mentioned earlier, whenever I start talking about it, I get a little tear up, only because it was such a dedicated service. I felt really I had done something for my country. As far as changing my political views, I'm basically, I just want this country to come together and the polarization that we're seeing now is very, very, very troubling. And political, yes, it is political. Is it one party over the other? It's portrayed that way, but it's people. It's people, and we need to pull our people together politically and in any way we can. I guess that's my position.
Someone has any other question? You want to ask him, Mario? Mario has all the questions today.
So at the start, you mentioned how you lived through 15 presidencies, and we talked about JFK's assassination and Ronald Reagan. Have there been any like presidencies that you particularly enjoyed or like did not enjoy as well?
You want to start?
You go.
Well, again, President Clinton was a favorite of mine, and President Obama. They both. And getting back to President Kennedy brought new life to the country, to the White House, a young family. President Clinton just seemed to be solid, just seemed to bring the country together. And President Obama, I just respect him and his wife for what they've done for this country. They represent, in my mind, what politically what this country is all about and what this country really needs. So those are my nominations for favorite presidents. Linda?
I agree.
Did you guys see any like residual effects from like the New Deal and stuff? Like you were born during FDR's presidency, right after the Great Depression, as like the country was kind of during World War II, essentially, or right. I can't remember the exact year you were born. So it was either right at the tail end of World War II or right after World War II ended.
Linda was.
Oh, you must have been during, yeah.
1939 was Linda,
Yeah.
and I'm 1941. So the war started in Germany in 39, and it wound through 45, 46. So we were growing up in the World War II era.
Our parents were, of course, delighted that VJ Day. I remember everybody went and danced in the streets. Everybody, they were so excited that the war was over. Everyone at that time had rations, so that you couldn't go and buy flour or sugar or anything at the store. You had a ration, everybody, because of the war effort. So of course they were thrilled when the ration system was over, when the war was over, and after that it was all about rebuilding the country in a positive way, and everybody chipped in. Everyone was ecstatic that we no longer had a war. Unfortunately, we were all so thrilled that it wasn't here ever, that we kept it. It was kept in Europe, and it never got here. And we were very careful for many, many generations after that to make sure that another one would never start on our continent.
An interesting sidelight to that comment. A crisis did develop during the early years. The early years of the Kennedy administration, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Again, We've got a notice, Sam, that we have 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, as your students probably understand, was a situation just 90 miles off, 60 miles off our coastline. Again, we were newly married, had Samantha's dad with us. No, Samantha, we were newly married. Samantha's dad was a glimmer in my eye. Anyways, I recall we had gotten. We were married in September, and I believe October was the time the Cuban Missile Crisis developed, and that was a frightening. That triggered nuclear consequences just 60 miles off our coastline, and that was an issue that very dramatic and very traumatic for the country at that particular time. Fortunately, John Kennedy stood firm, and the missile systems were removed. But that's another incident in our lifetime where war threatened and was avoided.
Seeing that you guys lived through so many fearful
We lost the video, Sam.
The audio.
The audio.
Lost the audio.
incidents like Vietnam and the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Hang on a second. How about, is it back?
That's good.
We're back. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you guys lived through so many fearful experiences like Vietnam and the Cuban Missile Crisis, what are your opinions on foreign involvement in general?
Today.
By the U.S. Yeah, today. Or, yeah.
Foreign involvement.
Like thinking, like, are you kind of thinking more like Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, like today?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts, I guess, on how the U.S. should handle kind of foreign affairs, things that are going on in the world today? What's the U.S.'s role, I guess, in the globe?
I think that we're overextended. I think our involvement in Ukraine and in Israel is absolutely necessary, but I'm concerned that we're becoming, or we have been, the policemen of the world. It's a very difficult situation. We have our own issues in our own country, and we're taking on the defense of the world. I'm troubled by that. I don't know the solution though.
I forgot. But so I know Mrs. Rafferty was talking about how you worked as a computer programmer, and I thought that was really interesting, especially in that age, because I'm taking a computer programming class at the moment as well, and my dad does that. But I was wondering, how do you think technology and the digitalization of the world, because you lived through the computer and the internet, how do you think that impacted your political views?
I'm really not sure how much it did. It was an exciting time to be part of that from the get-go and to really understand assembly language and how all the bits and the bytes and all that from the beginning. As far as my political views, I can't say it really did matter that much to me. That didn't seem to be part of that, other than just being in business, which of course over the years that it was people in that business for the most part were Republicans, and they were business people, and it still is an exciting time, and to understand it from the very beginning has been really exciting for me, and watch all that's happened through my lifetime, through my time of work.
Would you say that you were there a lot of women in the industry, in that industry, or were you one of a few?
No, I was really one of a few. We actually, we went to Amsterdam, a group of 3 women went to Shell Oil Company to install some software at one time, and we're the only women that had ever been in Shell Oil, which was the headquarters of, in Amsterdam. And there were 3 of us in there just to install programs for the company I was working for, Dun & Bradstreet Software. And it took us 2 weeks, and there had never been women inside that building. So it was interesting being a woman in that field.
Got a question, Sam, for your students. What is the solution to the polarization of our country?
Budding young political scientists, how do we fix this mess? What do you guys think?
I think like
Make sure you're nice and loud.
expanding like bipartisanship is a good start. Like, kind of being more accepting of it.
Can you hear him?
No, but go ahead and repeat what he said.
He was just saying expanding bipartisanship, so like working together across the aisle and like being more willing to. Sorry, there's just a bell. Being more willing to like work with other people and not dismiss them for their ideas, but try and bring both ideas together.
What about term limits?
What do you guys think about term limits?
We're concerned that the majority of, there's not enough youth in the government, and there's a little top heavy on the older generation. Not that we have anything against the older generation, but it's time for new blood in our government, time for honest government and dedicated.
Time to pass the torch.
Time to pass the torch.
You guys have any kind of last minute? Oh, I know the time's running down on this too. There's not that much time left, but do you guys have any other questions to kind of end with?
Do they have like advice for us?
What advice do you have for them?
Do what you're doing right now, which is become involved, become informed, become a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Yeah, I know that's a cliche, but we admire the fact that you have taken the steps to become informed and prepare yourselves to take on the responsibility of fixing what's wrong with the system as it is now. And we want to thank you for the opportunity. This has been recorded. I will, as I told your teacher, we will make a MP4 copy of this, and you'll have it. You'll have a code to access it on YouTube. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you setting up the Zoom call for us.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you guys. Love you. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. How do I end this?